It was a calm morning at the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. The agents were busy with their routine work, some checking files, others sipping coffee, when suddenly the heavy glass doors burst open. Every head turned. A large German shepherd came rushing in, his paws muddy, his fur wet from rain. The guards shouted for him to stop, but the dog didn't listen. He ran straight through the lobby, his breath quick and heavy as if he had been running for miles. Then everyone saw it, a young girl clinging weakly to his back. She was barefoot, her feet scratched and dirty, her dress torn as if she had been lost in the woods. The entire room froze in disbelief. The dog stopped near the front security desk and looked up at the agents. His deep brown eyes seemed to plead for help. For a moment, no one moved. Then Special Agent Miller, who was closest, rushed forward. "Get the medics," he shouted. Two paramedics who were already on standby ran toward the dog. They lifted the girl gently, noticing she was barely conscious. Her lips were dry and her small hands trembled as if she had been cold for a long time. The dog let out a soft whine, staying close to her stretcher. He didn't growl or panic. He just wanted to make sure she was safe. As they hurried the girl to the medical wing, another agent crouched down to check the dog's collar. The tag read Rex, K-9 Unit, Cedarville Police Department. Everyone exchanged surprised glances. Cedarville was a small town almost 40 miles away. How had this K-9 made it all the way to the FBI building carrying a child? The duty officer quickly called Cedarville Police Department. Within minutes, they confirmed that Rex had been reported missing 2 days ago during a late-night patrol near an abandoned highway. His handler, Officer Daniels, had been searching for him non-stop. No one knew where Rex had gone or why he had disappeared. Meanwhile, the little girl was taken to the FBI's medical room. Doctors surrounded her, checking her pulse and temperature. She was about 12 years old, malnourished, and covered in mud and small bruises. She looked fragile, but she was breathing steadily. They wrapped her in warm blankets and placed her on a hospital bed. The doctors tried asking questions, but she didn't respond. She was unconscious, lost in exhaustion and fear. Back in the lobby, the agents cleaned Rex and gave him water. He drank quickly, then lay down near the door, facing the direction he came from. It was as if he was waiting for someone or keeping watch. Agent Miller couldn't stop thinking about how this dog had found his way here. "He must have known this was the place to get help," he murmured. Another agent nodded, still staring at the muddy footprints across the marble floor. "That's not just instinct," she said softly. "That's purpose." As the morning went on, news spread quietly through the building. A few senior officials came to see Rex and the mysterious girl. The FBI director was briefed personally. "Keep it contained," he ordered. "No media, not until we know what's going on." The agents agreed. They sensed there was something extraordinary behind this strange rescue. Down in the forensics lab, technicians examined the dirt and leaves stuck in Rex's fur. The samples matched soil from a dense forest near Cedarville. That forest had old logging roads and abandoned shacks, places few people visited anymore. It seemed Rex had traveled from there all the way to Washington. Agents started to form a theory. The girl had been taken somewhere near that forest and Rex had found her, escaped with her, and somehow navigated the long way to the city. It sounded unbelievable, yet the evidence was right there in front of them. In the medical room, a nurse sat beside the girl, gently wiping the dirt from her face. She looked peaceful now, sleeping under the soft light. Every now and then she murmured something unclear, perhaps a name or a cry from her nightmare. Rex, who had been allowed to rest near her bed, lifted his head each time she made a sound. He gave a quiet whimper, then lay his head down again as if promising to stay close. The nurse watched the dog and shook her head in quiet wonder. "You're something special, aren't you?" she whispered. Hours passed and the FBI gathered all details about Rex. Officer Daniels was contacted and promised to drive to Washington immediately. "He's the smartest dog I've ever trained," Daniels told Agent Miller over the phone. "But I can't explain this. He was gone for 2 days. If he brought a child all that way, then he's done something no human could have." By afternoon, a small crowd had gathered outside the headquarters, reporters, locals, and onlookers who somehow caught word of the strange event. But the FBI refused to release any information. Inside, everyone focused on keeping the girl safe and figuring out what happened. Security footage from nearby streets was reviewed. One clip showed Rex running along the main highway entrance, carrying something small on his back. Cars slowed down, drivers staring in confusion. No one stopped him. They probably thought it was part of a police operation. The footage ended as Rex entered the main gate of the FBI complex. Agent Miller watched the video 3 times. "He carried her for miles," he said quietly. "That's not just training. That's devotion." Another agent added, "Or maybe he knew she couldn't survive if he didn't keep going." Later in the evening, Officer Daniels finally arrived. The moment he saw Rex, his eyes filled with tears. "Buddy?" he whispered, kneeling down and hugging the dog tightly. Rex wagged his tail but didn't leave the girl's side. Daniels noticed the scratches on Rex's legs and the dried blood near his paws. It was clear he had fought his way through rough terrain. Daniels turned to Agent Miller. "Whatever happened out there, this girl owes her life to him." That night, the building felt unusually quiet. Most agents stayed late waiting for updates. Everyone felt the same unspoken emotion, admiration mixed with disbelief. The story of Rex's arrival had touched something deep in them. They had seen heroes before, but this one didn't wear a badge or uniform. He only wore loyalty. As midnight approached, the doctor said the girl was stable but still unconscious. Daniel stayed beside Rex, gently petting his fur. "You did good, boy," he said softly. "You brought her home." Rex lifted his head and looked at him, then turned his eyes toward the sleeping girl again. His gaze was calm, almost human, as if he understood that his job wasn't over yet. No one in the building went home that night. Even the janitors moved quietly, not wanting to disturb the peace around the girl's room. Outside, the rain began to fall again, washing away Rex's muddy paw prints from the steps of the headquarters. But inside, something far more lasting remained. A sense of awe for a dog who had carried a stranger through miles of danger, guided only by instinct, courage, and heart. And while the world outside had no idea what had just happened, everyone inside the FBI knew they had witnessed something rare. They didn't know the girl's name yet or where she came from. But one thing was certain. She was alive because a brave K9 had refused to give up. The story was only beginning, but already it had changed everyone who saw it. The next morning, the sun rose softly over the FBI headquarters, painting the building in shades of gold. Inside, the air was still heavy with questions. Everyone wanted to know who the Barefoot girl was and how the police dog Rex had found her. In the medical room, the girl was still sleeping peacefully, her breathing steady. Her face looked calmer now, though faint marks of fear still lingered. A nurse quietly replaced the wet towel on her forehead and checked her pulse. Rex lay right beside the bed, eyes half open, watching her every movement. He refused to eat or rest far away from her. It was as if he knew she still needed him near. Agent Miller entered the room carrying a notebook. He greeted the nurse and slowly approached Rex. "Morning, hero," he said kindly, kneeling down to pet him. Rex's tail moved slightly. "We'll find out what happened, I promise," Miller added softly. He then turned to the nurse. "Any change?" She shook her head. "Not yet, but she seems stronger today." In another part of the building, the forensics team was working non-stop. They had collected samples of mud, leaves, and hair from Rex's fur. The results showed traces of a rare kind of tree sap found only in the Pine Hollow forest, a thick woodland near Cedarville. It was an isolated area about 40 miles away. "That's where he came from," one analyst said, pointing at the map. "It's possible she was kept there." Agent Miller listened carefully. The idea made sense. The forest had been abandoned for years, used occasionally by hunters but mostly left untouched. It was a good hiding place, too good. The team started building a timeline. Rex had gone missing 2 days before. The girl had likely been taken around the same time. If Rex found her in the forest, it meant he had stayed with her, protected her, and somehow guided her all the way to Washington. No GPS, no road signs, just instinct. The more they discussed it, the more unbelievable it seemed. Yet every piece of evidence pointed to one truth. Rex had led the girl to safety. Officer Daniels arrived again that morning, holding a file of Rex's training records. "He was trained for search and rescue," Daniels explained to the agents. "But this goes beyond training. Dogs can track scents, yes, but traveling that far while carrying a child, that's something else entirely." The agents nodded. Daniels looked proud, though his eyes were still red from lack of sleep. "He must have felt she was in danger," he said softly. "He must have decided he couldn't leave her behind." Meanwhile, technicians reviewed footage from nearby highways. One camera had caught a quick glimpse of a black van parked near the edge of Pine Hollow Forest 2 nights earlier. Another showed a large dog running beside the road sometime after midnight. The timestamps matched Rex's disappearance. The agents now had a possible lead. "Find every vehicle that matches that van," Miller ordered. "We might be dealing with something serious." Back in the medical room, the atmosphere felt gentle and calm. The nurse played soft music in the background. The girl's fingers twitched slightly as though she was dreaming. Rex lifted his head, ears pointed, waiting. Then he rested again, his head on his paws. A small smile appeared on the nurse's face. "You really care about her, don't you?" she whispered. Rex let out a quiet sigh as if answering yes. Hours passed. Agents collected data, made calls, and built a possible story. The working theory was that the girl had been kidnapped and taken deep into the woods. Maybe the abductors had planned to move her later. But something went wrong. Rex might have been on patrol when he came across their trail. If he saw the girl being hurt or taken, he might have chased after them and tracked them to their hiding place. From there, he could have broken in, helped her escape, and carried her out. But no one knew for sure. Everything depended on the girl waking up and talking. By late afternoon, rain clouds gathered again outside. Thunder rolled in the distance. Inside the HQ, a sense of waiting filled every corner. Reporters had started asking questions about the mysterious dog and the rescued child, but the FBI refused to release any statements. They wanted to protect the girl's privacy. Still, whispers spread through the media about a brave dog who brought a kidnapped girl to safety. People began calling Rex a miracle dog online, even though the full story wasn't known yet. In the evening, Agent Miller sat with Officer Daniels in the observation room. Through the glass, they watched Rex lying near the bed. Daniel spoke quietly, his voice filled with emotion. "I remember the day I trained him for the first time," he said. "He was stubborn, wouldn't sit still, wouldn't obey commands. But once he bonded with me, he became unstoppable. He always had this feeling about people in danger. I've seen him bark at a missing person's photo before we even started a search. He somehow knew who to look for." Miller nodded. "Maybe he sensed this girl too." Daniel sighed. "Maybe fate brought them together." The night grew darker. The rain hit the windows, creating a soft rhythm that echoed through the quiet halls. Inside the medical room, Rex stirred suddenly. His ears perked up. The nurse noticed his reaction and turned toward the bed. The girl moved slightly under the blanket. Her lips parted and a faint sound came out, a small moan, weak but real. "She's waking up," the nurse whispered. She quickly called the doctor. Within seconds, medical staff and agents rushed in. Daniel stayed near the doorway, watching anxiously. The girl's eyelids fluttered. Her breathing quickened. The doctor spoke softly. "It's okay, you're safe now." The girl's eyes slowly opened. For a moment, they were filled with confusion, as if she didn't know where she was. Then she turned her head and saw Rex. Her expression changed instantly. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "You found me." Her voice was hoarse, but her words were clear enough for everyone in the room to hear. Rex lifted his head, tail wagging slightly, and let out a soft bark as if to answer her. The nurse smiled, relief flooding her face. "She's awake," she said, tears in her own eyes. The doctor asked gently, "Can you tell us your name?" The girl blinked, thinking for a moment. "Emily," she whispered. "Emily Parker." The agents exchanged looks. Finally, they had a name. The doctor asked a few more simple questions, but Emily was too weak to speak much. They decided not to push her. She needed rest and safety. Before they left, Emily looked at Rex again. "He didn't leave me," she said softly. "He brought me here." Everyone in the room felt a lump in their throat. After she fell asleep again, the agents gathered in the hallway. "We'll wait until she's stronger," Miller said. "But now we know she's the key to everything." Daniels patted Rex gently. "You did good, buddy," he whispered. Rex leaned against him, finally allowing himself to relax. Outside, the rain began to ease. The city lights reflected on the wet streets, glowing softly. Inside the FBI building, there was a quiet sense of victory, small but powerful. The girl was alive, the dog was safe, and answers were beginning to form. But no one yet knew the full truth of what Emily had been through or who had taken her. That would come later. For now, all anyone could do was wait, for her to wake again, for her to tell her story, and for justice to begin. And through it all, Rex stayed beside her, his eyes never leaving her side, guarding her as faithfully as he had from the moment he found her in the dark. When morning came again, the world outside looked calm, but inside the FBI headquarters everything was focused on one thing: the young girl named Emily Parker, who had just begun to wake after a nightmare that none of the agents could yet understand. The night before, she had opened her eyes for the first time, said her name, and whispered a few words that broke everyone's heart. "He didn't leave me. He brought me here." Those few words changed everything. Now, as daylight touched the window blinds of her hospital room, the FBI team gathered quietly in the hallway. Agent Miller, Officer Daniels, and a child psychologist named Dr. Grace Turner stood together, planning how to speak with Emily again. They didn't want to rush her. She was still weak, and the memory of what had happened could be painful, but they needed her story. It was the only way to find out who had taken her and why. Inside the room, Rex rested near Emily's bed. He looked tired but peaceful. His golden brown eyes followed every sound she made. Whenever she shifted slightly, his ears twitched and his nose moved closer to the edge of her blanket. He had hardly slept since bringing her in. The nurses said that whenever they tried to move him, he would simply walk back and lie down again beside her. When Emily opened her eyes that morning, she looked around the room slowly. It was bright and clean. A faint scent of disinfectant hung in the air. She blinked several times before noticing Rex's face beside the bed. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Hey boy," she whispered weakly. Rex lifted his head and let out a soft sound, half bark, half sigh, as if to tell her he was still there. A nurse walked in quietly. "Good morning, sweetheart," she said softly. "You're safe now. You're in the FBI hospital wing." Emily frowned slightly, the name sounding unfamiliar. "The FBI?" she repeated in a faint voice. The nurse nodded gently. "Yes, the big police. They're here to help you." A few minutes later, Dr. Grace came in holding a warm smile. "Hi, Emily," she said in a kind voice. "I'm Grace. I just want to talk to you for a bit." "Nothing scary, okay?" Emily nodded, though her eyes stayed on Rex. Grace sat down on the chair beside her. "You've been through a lot," she said softly. "We don't need to talk about everything right now. But can you tell me how you met this brave dog?" Emily looked thoughtful. She ran her fingers slowly through the blanket, gathering courage. "It was dark," she said finally. "I was walking home from school. I took the shortcut near the woods. Then there was a van. It stopped. 2 men got out." Her voice trembled slightly and Grace gently interrupted. "It's okay, Emily. You're safe now." Emily took a breath, then continued. "They grabbed me and put me inside the van. I screamed, but no one came." Tears rolled down her cheeks and Grace handed her a tissue. "It's all right. You're safe here," Grace repeated softly. "You don't have to remember everything right now." Emily nodded and wiped her tears. "I remember the smell of smoke. They took me to a small house in the woods. They locked me in a room. It was cold, and I could hear them talking outside. They said something about waiting for someone to call." Grace leaned forward gently. "And Rex? When did you see him?" Emily's eyes softened. "He came on the second night," she said, a faint smile returning. "I heard barking outside. Loud barking. They got scared. One of them went out to check. I heard a crash. Then I saw the door break open. Rex came in through the window. He had blood on his leg, but he didn't stop. He came right to me." Grace listened quietly, her heart heavy. Emily's small hands trembled as she spoke. "He bit the rope on my hands. Then he kept pushing me with his nose like he wanted me to follow. I was scared, but he barked again, so I ran." The nurse, who was listening from the side, covered her mouth, her eyes shining. Emily continued, her voice growing a little stronger. "We ran through the woods. It was raining. I fell so many times, but he always came back and helped me up. When I couldn't walk anymore, he lay down and pushed me until I climbed on his back. He walked for a long, long time. I don't remember much after that. Just lights, cars. Then we were here." By the time she finished, the entire room was silent. Even Rex seemed to understand the importance of what she had just said. He stood up, walked closer, and placed his head on the edge of the bed. Emily reached out and rested her small hand on his fur. "He didn't stop, not even once," she whispered. Grace smiled warmly. "He's a hero, Emily, and so are you. You were very brave." After the conversation, Grace stepped outside to update the agents. Agent Miller wrote notes quickly. 2 men, black van, cabin in the woods, he repeated. That matches what we found from the soil samples in the camera footage. Daniels added, I knew Rex must have followed that van. He must have tracked her scent all the way. They decided to show Emily a few photos later, not to pressure her but to help her remember. For now the doctors wanted her to rest. Miller looked through the glass window at the little girl lying beside the dog. She's lucky he found her, he said softly. Daniels nodded. Or maybe he's lucky she trusted him. That afternoon, Officer Daniels took Rex outside for a short walk. The rain had stopped and the ground was soft beneath their feet. The other agents gathered near the entrance, watching as Rex sniffed around, tail wagging slowly. Even though he looked tired, there was a sense of calm in his movement, as if he knew his job was almost done. People passing by stopped to watch. Some clapped softly. Others simply smiled. Daniels patted his head proudly. You did good, partner, he said. Back inside, Grace sat with Emily again, helping her eat a bowl of soup. You're getting stronger already, Grace said kindly. Emily smiled faintly. I just want to go home, she said quietly. My mom must be so scared. Grace touched her hand gently. We'll find her soon. The agents are already working on it. Meanwhile, Miller and his team were busy connecting all the pieces. They identified 3 possible cabins in the Pine Hollow forest area that matched Emily's description. By evening, a search team was ready to move. Helicopters, drones, and local police were called in. Rex was resting now, but his name was already listed in the mission briefing as the key witness. That night, as Emily slept peacefully, Agent Miller stood outside her room. Daniels joined him quietly. You think she'll be okay? Daniels asked. Miller nodded slowly. She will. She's strong. She has you. And that dog, Daniels smiled faintly. You know, when Rex went missing, I couldn't sleep. I kept blaming myself, but now I think maybe he had a reason to go. Miller looked through the glass, watching Rex lying by Emily's bed once more. Maybe he did, he said. Maybe he was meant to find her. The building fell silent again as night deepened. Outside, the city glowed faintly through the mist. Inside, a wounded dog and a fragile girl slept side by side, one who had found courage and loyalty, and the other who had found safety and faith. The next day, things would begin to change. Emily would look at pictures and name the faces of the men who took her. The FBI would begin the chase. But for now, that moment in the quiet hospital room was everything. A girl safe, a dog resting, and a promise silently kept between them that neither would ever be alone again. The next morning, the air inside the FBI building felt different. There was a quiet determination in every hallway. Everyone knew the investigation had reached its turning point. The girl, Emily Parker, was awake, talking, and beginning to remember. Her soft words could unlock everything, the truth about who had taken her and how Rex, the loyal K9, had saved her life. In the hospital room, Emily sat propped up on her pillow. She looked stronger now, her face still pale but her eyes clear. She had eaten breakfast and smiled shyly when the nurse told her that people all over the building were calling Rex a hero. The dog sat close by, resting his head near her blanket, his eyes watchful as always. Every now and then he wagged his tail when someone entered the room, but he never moved far from Emily's side. Agent Miller came in carrying a small folder. Behind him walked Dr. Grace Turner and Officer Daniels. Miller smiled gently. Good morning, Emily. How are you feeling today? I'm better, Emily said softly. She glanced at Rex. He stayed here all night again. Daniels smiled. He's your guardian now, he said warmly. Miller placed the folder on the table and sat down across from her. Emily, he said kindly, you've helped us a lot already. You were very brave to tell us about the cabin and the van. Now we just need a little more help. I'm going to show you some pictures. You don't have to look at all of them, and if you feel tired, we'll stop, okay? Emily nodded slowly. Okay. Miller opened the folder and spread out several printed photos on the table. Each picture showed a man's face, different angles, different expressions. They were all possible suspects the FBI had been watching for years. Emily looked at the photos quietly for a long time. Her small fingers trembled a little as she pointed to one of them. That's him, she said in a low voice. The one who drove the van. Miller exchanged a quick glance with Daniels. Are you sure? He asked gently. Emily nodded firmly. He had a tattoo on his neck. A small bird. He wore the same jacket. Miller slid that picture aside. You did great, Emily. Now do you remember anyone else? Emily hesitated, then pointed to another face. Him too. He used to bring food. He never talked much. The other one called him Rick. Miller noted the name quickly. The two suspects were now identified. David Cole and Rick Harris, both with long criminal records involving theft and kidnapping. They had recently been spotted near the Cedarville area. Daniels clenched his jaw. They were right there near the forest, he said. Probably living in that old cabin. Miller turned back to Emily. You've helped us more than you can imagine, he said softly. You can rest now. We'll take care of the rest. Grace smiled at her. You're safe now, Emily. You did something very brave today. Emily nodded and looked down, petting Rex's fur. He's the brave one, she whispered. A few hours later, a meeting was held in the FBI's operation room. Maps covered the walls with red circles marking the Pine Hollow Forest and nearby highways. Satellite images of old cabins flashed on screens. Miller stood at the front, pointing at one of them. This is the place, he said. We found tire marks, footprints, and scraps of food packaging near the cabin. All signs match Emily's story. A field team prepared immediately. Helicopters were arranged, and drones were sent ahead to confirm movement in the area. Miller coordinated with local police to block nearby roads. The goal was simple: capture the two men before they could disappear. As the team moved out, Officer Daniels stayed behind with Rex and Emily. The girl had fallen asleep again after the interview, her hand resting on Rex's paw. Daniels quietly scratched behind the dog's ear. They'll get them, buddy, he whispered. You've already done the hardest part. Hours later, news came through the radio. The agents had reached the forest. The drones picked up signs of recent activity near one of the cabins, smoke from a small fire and two figures moving outside. When the tactical team arrived, they surrounded the area carefully. One man tried to run but was caught near the stream. The other was found inside the cabin, hiding in the corner. Both surrendered quickly when they realized they were surrounded. Inside the cabin, agents found everything that confirmed Emily's story: an old rope, a torn piece of her school uniform, empty food cans, and the same jacket with the bird tattoo on the collar. There was even an empty dog food can near the doorway, probably something Rex had found and eaten while keeping Emily alive. When the message reached the headquarters, everyone let out a sigh of relief. Miller turned to Daniels. They're in custody, he said. We got them. Daniels smiled and looked at Rex. You hear that, boy? You did it. Rex wagged his tail and barked once, almost as if he understood the words. Later that evening, Miller and Grace visited Emily's room to tell her the good news. She was sitting up in bed reading a children's book the nurse had brought. When she saw their faces, she looked nervous. Did they find them? She asked quietly. Miller nodded. Yes, Emily, they're both in jail now. They can't hurt anyone again. Emily let out a small breath of relief. Good, she whispered. I knew Rex wouldn't stop until they were caught. Grace sat beside her. You were so brave to help us, Emily. You remembered details that only you could know. Because of you, those men can't hurt another child. Emily smiled faintly. I just want to go home now. I miss my mom. You will, Miller promised. We're already arranging it. Your mom's been found. She's been looking for you day and night. At that, Emily's eyes filled with tears. She covered her face with her hands. Grace wrapped an arm gently around her shoulders. It's okay to cry, sweetheart, she said softly. You're safe. You're going home soon. Rex stood up, tail wagging slowly. He leaned his head against Emily's arm as if to comfort her. She hugged him tightly. I'll never forget you, she whispered. The next day, preparations began for Emily's reunion with her family. But before that, the FBI decided to hold a small private ceremony inside the headquarters to recognize Rex's heroism. Everyone wanted to thank the brave dog who had done what even trained agents might not have managed, saving a life by pure courage and loyalty. In the ceremony room, banners were hung and a few reporters were quietly invited. Rex stood proudly beside Officer Daniels, wearing a clean collar with a silver tag engraved with his name. Emily, dressed in new clothes, walked in holding a small bouquet of flowers. She looked healthier, smiling shyly at the crowd. When it was time, the FBI director stepped forward. Today, he said, we honor a member of law enforcement who acted beyond duty, beyond instinct, and beyond fear. This K-9 officer crossed forests, highways, and danger to bring a child back to safety. His name is Rex. The room filled with applause. Cameras clicked and everyone cheered softly. Rex tilted his head, tail wagging. Daniels knelt beside him, pinning a small gold medal to his collar. Emily stepped forward and hugged Rex's neck tightly. "You're my hero," she said in a voice filled with emotion. Tears shone in the eyes of many who watched. Miller wiped his face quietly and smiled. "That's one for the history books," he whispered. That evening, when the ceremony was over, Emily sat outside on the steps of the building with Rex beside her. The sun was setting, turning the sky orange and pink. She looked down at Rex and smiled. "You found me when no one else could," she said softly. "I hope you know how much I love you." Rex gave a small bark and rested his head on her lap. She stroked his fur, feeling peaceful for the first time in weeks. Inside the FBI offices, agents packed up files, satisfied that justice had been done. But for everyone who had witnessed it, the real story wasn't just about arrests or medals. It was about a bond between a child and a dog, a story of faith, courage, and the kind of love that asks for nothing in return. And though the world would soon hear about the K-9 who saved a girl, those who were there that week would never forget the quiet moments, the sight of a muddy dog carrying a barefoot child into safety, the way that same dog refused to leave her side, and the day she finally smiled again because of him. A week later, the FBI headquarters looked brighter than ever. The story of the brave K-9 Rex had quietly spread beyond the walls of the building. Though the FBI tried to keep things private, stories have a way of traveling fast, especially ones that touch the heart. Reporters camped outside, trying to catch a glimpse of the heroic dog and the little girl he had saved. Inside, however, the agents were focused on something far more important: Emily's reunion with her mother. That morning, Emily sat near the big window of the hospital room, sunlight falling softly on her hair. She was finally strong enough to walk a few steps on her own. She wore a clean blue dress that the nurses had bought for her, and in her hands she held a small ribbon she had tied around Rex's collar as a thank you gift. Rex sat beside her, alert but calm as always. Whenever a new person entered the room, his eyes followed them closely, making sure Emily was safe. Agent Miller entered with a warm smile. "Good morning, Emily," he said. "I have good news for you." Emily turned quickly, her eyes wide. "Is it about my mom?" she asked. Miller nodded. "Yes, she's here. She just arrived a few minutes ago." Emily froze for a second, unable to believe it. "She's really here?" she whispered. "She is," Miller said kindly. "She's been waiting outside since early morning. Are you ready to see her?" Emily stood up, her heart racing. "Yes," she said in a trembling voice. The nurse opened the door gently. A woman rushed in, tired, pale, her eyes red from sleepless nights and endless tears. When she saw Emily standing there, she gasped and covered her mouth. "Emily," she cried softly. "Mom!" Emily ran forward, and the two of them embraced tightly. The entire room fell silent as mother and daughter held each other, their tears mixing with relief and love. It was a reunion filled with every emotion imaginable: sadness, joy, disbelief, and gratitude. Rex stood nearby, watching quietly. After a moment, Emily turned and smiled through her tears. "Mom, this is Rex," she said proudly. "He saved me." Her mother knelt down in front of the dog and placed her shaking hand on his head. "Thank you," she whispered, tears falling down her cheeks. "Thank you for bringing my baby back." Rex wagged his tail gently and let out a soft bark as if saying, "You're welcome." The agent standing nearby smiled, their eyes wet too. For everyone in that room, it was a moment they would never forget. Over the next few days, Emily and her mother stayed in Washington so that doctors could make sure she was completely healthy. During that time, the FBI gave them a quiet room near the main building. Rex visited every day with Officer Daniels. Whenever Emily saw him, she ran up and hugged him tightly. She would feed him small treats and talk to him as if he were her best friend. Sometimes she even read short stories to him from her picture books, and Rex would lie down beside her, closing his eyes peacefully. One afternoon, while Emily and Rex were playing outside in the garden, a small group of reporters stood beyond the fence, hoping to get a glimpse of the famous dog. But the FBI had decided that this story wasn't about fame. It was about heart. They wanted to protect Emily's privacy and keep her safe from attention. Still, People everywhere had already started talking. In small towns and big cities alike, people shared photos of Rex online with captions like "A dog's love has no limits" and "The bravest K9 in America." Inside the headquarters, Agent Miller and Officer Daniels sat together, watching Emily laugh in the garden. Daniels smiled quietly. "I've seen Rex save people before," he said. "But I've never seen him this calm, this connected. It's like he knows she's family now." Miller nodded. "Sometimes loyalty goes beyond training," he replied. "It's something you can't teach. It just lives in the heart." The next morning, a small ceremony was arranged once again, but this time, it wasn't just for the medal. It was for a special announcement. The FBI director stood in front of the gathered agents with Emily and her mother sitting in the front row. Rex sat beside Officer Daniels, his tail wagging slowly. The director smiled as he began to speak. "Rex has shown the world something that goes beyond duty or law. He showed compassion, courage, and love. Today we are officially retiring Rex from field duty. From now on, he will live with his handler, Officer Daniels, and he will always be part of our family." There was applause all around. Then the director turned toward Emily and said, "And for this brave young girl who showed strength even in fear, we want to give her something special." An agent stepped forward holding a framed certificate that read, "In recognition of bravery and courage in the face of fear." It had Emily's name written in gold letters. She smiled shyly as she received it. "Thank you," she said softly. After the ceremony, reporters were allowed to take one official photo. Emily standing beside Rex, her small hand on his back, both looking straight at the camera. It became one of the most shared images of the year, symbolizing hope and kindness. When it was time for Emily and her mother to return home to Cedarville, the farewell was emotional. Everyone came to the lobby to say goodbye. Agent Miller gave Emily a small stuffed toy of a German shepherd. "To remind you of a real hero," he said with a smile. Emily hugged him tightly. "Thank you for saving me," she said. Miller shook his head gently. "No, Emily. You were saved by love and by this brave soul." He patted Rex's head. "Never forget him." Outside, a car was waiting. Emily knelt down one last time in front of Rex. "You'll always be my best friend," she whispered, hugging him. Rex pressed his head gently against her shoulder, closing his eyes. When she stood up and walked toward the car with her mother, Rex whined softly but didn't move. He just watched them leave, his eyes calm but full of understanding. As the car disappeared around the corner, Daniel stood beside Rex. "She's safe now, buddy," he said softly. "You did your job." Over the next few weeks, Rex's story spread nationwide. Newspapers printed his photo, calling him the dog who carried hope. Letters poured into the FBI office. Children sent drawings. Families sent thank you cards, and people wrote messages about how Rex's courage had inspired them to believe in kindness again. Emily often sent letters too. In one of them, she wrote, "Dear Rex, I'm going to school again now. Mom says you are my guardian angel. I hope I can see you soon. I miss you." Daniels read the letter aloud to Rex, who wagged his tail as if he understood every word. Months later, when Emily and her mother returned to Washington for a visit, Rex was waiting at the entrance. The moment Emily stepped out of the car, Rex ran toward her, barking joyfully. She laughed and knelt down, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I missed you too," she said, her voice filled with pure happiness. It was a reunion as warm as their first meeting. This time there were no tears, only smiles. Years later, when Emily grew older, she often shared Rex's story at her school. She told her classmates how one dog's courage taught her the meaning of faith and kindness. She always ended her story with the same words, "He found me when no one else could. He showed me that love doesn't need words, just heart." And somewhere in the home of Officer Daniels, Rex lived out his peaceful retirement, still strong, still gentle, and still watching every door as if expecting one small girl to walk in again. His days were filled with sunshine, short walks, and quiet evenings by the porch. Whenever Daniels talked to him about that day, Rex would tilt his head as if remembering the long road, the rain, and the little barefoot girl who trusted him completely. For everyone who had heard the story, it became more than just news, it became a reminder. A reminder that heroes don't always wear uniforms or badges. Sometimes they walk on four legs, guided by something greater than courage, by love that refuses to give up. And so, In the heart of every person who knew Rex's story, there lived a simple truth that kindness, loyalty, and love can cross any distance and conquer any darkness. It was a story that started with fear but ended with hope, carried on the back of a dog who refused to stop running until the world was safe again.